Evening, everyone. This is a national webinar, the topic Gender Equality and Women's Rights, organized by the Department of Sociology in association with IQAC, Government College Daman. I am Neha Mishra, I am the convener of this program, and I am Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, Government College Daman. I am very happy to see the responses which we received from the participants within and outside the country. I welcome you all to this session. Today we have with us a very vibrant and influencing personality as our guest speaker, Prof.Nishi Pandey ma'am. On behalf of the college management and Department of Sociology, I welcome you to this program, ma'am. And also I would like to register my token of gratitude for accepting our invitation. Now I would, thank you ma'am. Now I would like to request our Vice Principal, sir, Dr. S. Balasubramaniam, to give the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Neha. First of all, I welcome Professor Nishi Pandey, the speaker of the day, for accepting our invitation and sparing her valuable time to share her knowledge on the topic, which is very relevant for the day. As the convener of the session said, we are having more than 3,000 registrations across the country and from abroad. And I welcome each and every participant, one and all. Our principal, Dr. S. Kumar, has given us all sort of support in conduct of in organizing this conference. I welcome Dr. Sanjay Kumar also for this conference. Without taking much time, it is Dr. Ms.Neha.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving ahead, now I would like to request our principal, sir, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, to deliver the inaugural address. Please, sir.
नमस्कार, सब लोगों का स्वागत है, सभी साथियों का, सभी सहभागियों का, पार्टिसिपेंट्स का, खास करके अपने जो ऑनरेबल माननीय अतिथि हैं डॉक्टर निशि पांडे जी का। कोविड ने कई चुनौतियां खड़ी की हैं, कई समस्याएं पैदा की हैं हमारे सामान्य जीवन में, लेकिन इसने कुछ अवसर भी प्रदान किए हैं। और वो अवसर इसी प्रकार से है कि आमतौर पर सामान्य तौर पे जो चीज़ें संभव नहीं थी वह संभव हो रही हैं। कॉलेज 3000 लोगों तक पहुंच रहा है, एक विदुषी महिला इस पर अपना विषय रखने वाली है। रियली इट हैज क्रिएटेड एन अपॉर्चुनिटी एंड वी हैव बीन यूजिंग दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी वेरी वेल। मैं इस अवसर पर महाविद्यालय के समाजशास्त्र विभाग को और IQAC की टीम को बधाई देना चाहता हूं कि उन्होंने बहुत ही उपयुक्त विषय उठाया है, स्त्री विमर्श जैसा विषय चुना है। अभी वैसे इसके कार्यक्रम के सत्र की पूर्व पीठिका में जो माननीय वक्ता है उन्होंने कहा कि लेकिन मैं इसको स्त्री विमर्श के तौर पर ही देख रहा हूँ, और इस पर एक अत्यंत विदुषी महिला को आमंत्रित किया है अपने विचार रखने के लिए। स्त्री विमर्श एक अत्यंत सरल विषय भी है और जटिल भी है। सरल इसलिए है कि इसमें पहचान बहुत आसानी से हो सकती है कि किस समाज के किस तबके के लिए चर्चा होनी है, और जटिल इसलिए है कि वो समाज का तबका हमारे साथ, पूरे समाज के साथ इस प्रकार से जुड़ा हुआ है, एक परिवार में, एक जगह पर, हर एक क्षेत्र में जुड़ा हुआ है कि अलग से उस पर विमर्श करने की जरूरत पड़ती है क्या, या है क्या, यह विषय भी अपने आप में एक अलग विषय हो सकता है। स्त्री विमर्श को लेकर के हम लोग 3 कालखंड की चर्चा संक्षेप में करूंगा, मुझे सुनने का ज्यादा अवसर मिलेगा, अच्छा भी लगेगा मुझे। प्राचीन काल के बारे में हम लोग जानते हैं कि वहां पर स्त्री विमर्श करके कोई विशेष उल्लेख नहीं है, क्योंकि आमतौर पे जो सामान्य जीवन था उसमें स्त्रियों का जो सहभागिता थी, पार्टिसिपेशन था, या जो उनका समाज में जो उनकी भूमिका थी वो लगभग पुरुषों के बराबर थी। कई मंत्र मिलते हैं, वो मंत्र बार बार दोहराए जाते हैं। यहाँ पर फिर से मैं दोहराना चाहूंगा, यत्र नार्यस्तु पूज्यन्ते रमन्ते तत्र देवता, ऐसे मंत्र मिलते हैं। मैत्रेयी गार्गी का उदाहरण देते हैं, मैं उसमें बहुत विस्तार से नहीं जाऊंगा। समस्या शुरू हुई है मध्यकाल। मध्यकाल में आक्रमणकारियों के कारण भारत में जो सामाजिक व्यवस्था थी वो पूरी तरह से छिन्न भिन्न हो गई, और लगातार युद्ध के कारण या अन्य दूसरी बातों के जो समय परिस्थितियां उत्पन्न हुई होंगी, धीरे धीरे महिलाओं को पीछे, पहले शायद सुरक्षात्मक दृष्टिकोण से और बाद में फिर वो व्यवस्था में रूढ़ के रूप में मध्यकाल में मेडिएवल पीरियड में वो चीजें आई और महिलाएं धीरे धीरे पीछे की तरफ छूटने लगी। उसके बारे में मैं बहुत विस्तार से नहीं जाऊंगा। वर्तमान काल में हम देखते हैं तो वर्तमान काल में बहुत सारे ऐसे क्षेत्र हैं जिस पर बेटियां खूब अच्छी कर रही हैं। आज भी हमारे यहाँ हमारे कॉलेज में जब वो लैपटॉप वितरण का कार्यक्रम चल रहा था तो मैंने महसूस किया कि ज्यादातर जो मेधावी छात्रों को मिल रहा था तो उसमें ज्यादातर अपनी बेटियां ही थी, यानी महिलाएं ही थी। तो यह विषय जब इस प्रकार का है तो समस्या है क्या? तो मुझे लगता है कि समस्या तो है और गंभीर है, और गंभीर है इसलिए विचारणीय है, और शायद विमर्श की जरूरत है, जिसके कारण यह विषय आज आया है या और भी कई प्लेटफॉर्म पर इसके बारे में चर्चा हो रही है। इस पूरी समस्या के दो पहलू हैं। एक पहलू तो है जो बहनों के साथ छेड़खानी होती है, उनके साथ जो अत्याचार होता है, यानी बलात्कार, जिसको शब्द हम लोग प्रयोग करना नहीं चाहते, लेकिन वो शायद एक पूरे हमारी मानसिक जो पीड़न के कारण कई बार जलने जलाने की बात आती है। इस तरह के जो अन्याय अपराध हैं वो तो एक प्रकार के एक पहलू, उस पर तुरंत कार्रवाई हो, न्याय व्यवस्था इतनी सटीक बने, इतनी मजबूत बने कि तुरंत कार्रवाई हो, सटीक कार्रवाई हो और कड़ी सजा मिले, इस विषय में किसी का मतभेद नहीं हो सकता है और निरंतर उस पर प्रयत्न करने की जरूरत है। कई बार उस विषय में आता है कि पुलिस ने रजिस्टर करने में, केस रजिस्टर करने में देरी की या अन्य चीजों के कारण बहुत लंबा खिंच जाता है और उसमें जो उत्पीड़ित महिला है उसको बहुत परेशानी, सामाजिक परेशानी झेलनी पड़ती है। यह तो एक बहुत ही महत्व का विषय है ही। इससे कम महत्व का विषय नहीं है कि जो सामाजिक भेदभाव समाज में चल रहा है, संपत्ति के अधिकार में, अभी जैसे 3 तलाक का मुद्दा आया, उसमें बिल्कुल दो वैवाहिक संबंध को विच्छेद करने का अधिकार जितना पुरुष को है उतना ही महिला की, स्त्री को भी होना चाहिए, लेकिन वो एक तरफा था। उसको संतुलित करने का प्रयास, और इस तरह की कई कुप्रथाएं अपने समाज में चल रही हैं। बेटी यानी भाई बहन है, दोनों को माँ पिता प्यार करते हैं, लेकिन चाय बना करके या पानी का ग्लास लेकर के भाई को बहन ही देगी। अब यह विषय अपराध की श्रेणी में तो नहीं आता है, लेकिन यहाँ पर कहीं ना कहीं भेदभाव दिखता है। तो ऐसे बहुत सारे ऐसे सामाजिक पहलू हैं जिन पर विमर्श करने की आवश्यकता है, और उसके हिसाब से समाज में उसके लिए जागृति फैलाने की जरूरत है। और फिर केवल जागृति नहीं, समाज को संवेदनशील भी बनाना है। तो मुझे लगता है कि यह विषय लंबा चलने वाला है, और इसलिए यह विमर्श आज के एक सत्र के बाद खत्म हो जाएगा, पूरा हो जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं है। ऐसे कई सेशन में, कई सत्रों में और निरंतर यह विमर्श चलता रहे जब तक कि इसमें एक संतुलन नहीं हो स्थापित हो। इन्हीं बातों के साथ मैं एक बार फिर प्रोफेसर निशि पांडे जी को हार्दिक रूप से आमंत्रित करता हूं, उनका स्वागत करता हूं। और वैसे मैं भी बहुत उत्सुक हूं उनको सुनने के लिए। उन्होंने जिस प्रकार से व्यवस्था का पहले संचालन किया, उससे लग रहा है कि उनकी तेजस्विता बिल्कुल निखर करके सामने आई है। तो नेहा जी, अब आप संभालिए, हम लोग अब सुनेंगे। ओवर टू नेहा।
Thank you very much, sir. Now it's time to start the main session, but prior to that, I would like to draw your attention and would like to give a brief introduction of our guest speaker, Professor Nishi Pandey ma'am. Currently, she holds the position of Professor, Department of English and Modern European Languages in University of Lucknow. She is also the Director of International Collaboration Cell of the University. And Professor Pandey was the first woman who has been appointed as Chief Proctor, Chief Provost, Dean Student Welfare, and many such positions in the university. Professor Pandey has been awarded with the Fulbright Scholarship twice, once in 2005 and another in 2018 by USIEF. In addition to this, Professor Pandey is the Vice President of All India Women's Conference Lucknow chapter. This is the oldest women's NGO in Asia, which is working towards the emancipation, education, and empowerment of women. And she's also the recipient of multiple awards, out of which I would like to name some, like Saraswati Samman by Government of Uttar Pradesh and Rani Lakshmi by Bravery Award by Government of Uttar Pradesh for academic and administrative achievements that inspire many women and girls and promote empowerment. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out your time for this program and accepting our invitation to be the speaker for today's session. Now, without taking much time, I would like to request Madam to address the gathering, as I'm very much sure that everyone is eagerly waiting to listen to you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neha. I hope I can be heard. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, clearly.
Yeah, all right. So I would like to thank the principal, Dr. S. Kumar, the coordinator of the IQAC, Dr. S. Balasubramaniam, and of course, Neha Mishra, whom I've had the privilege and pleasure of knowing personally when she was in Lucknow. Let me first say how privileged and honored I am that I've been called today by your college and by the Department of Sociology to be speaking today about gender discrimination and women's rights. Of course, we will be coming to women's rights and gender discrimination about women. But before I go there, I would just, for the sake of the students, try to say that when we use the word gender discrimination, we are not talking only about women. Gender discrimination is actually based, any kind of discrimination is based on an actual or perceived gender identity. That's what we call gender discrimination. So you're being discriminated against because you are of a particular gender. And here I would very quickly want to talk to you about gender identity. What is gender identity? Gender identity is constituted of 4 factors: self-concept, self-identity, self-perspective, self-structure. And when we talk of self-perception is defined by self-concept, self-esteem, self-knowledge, and a social self. These 4 things constitute what we call the self. And then we have something known as self-concept. So every individual has a collection of beliefs. Every individual has a collection of experiences. And you have certain beliefs about yourself. For example, I would say that, or somebody would say that I'm an extrovert. I make friends easily. I mix well socially. So generally the self-concept embodies the answer to the question, who am I? So it is again constituted of 4 elements: your past self, your present self, your future possible selves you may have, and something known as self-schema. Now, self-schema talks to you about long-lasting, stable beliefs, memories, experiences that make you or constitute you. Now, we have this concept of the self, everybody has it. Then we are born with a sexual, or born male, or we are born female, or we are born where it is not distinguished biologically whether we are male or female. So when we talk of gender and we talk of gender identity, we are talking of that identity which is related to appearance, mannerisms, or other gender-related characteristics, which an individual adopts or accepts in keeping with his sex at the time of birth, or not in keeping with the sex at his time of birth. So gender identity, essentially, we must understand, is the personal sense of one's own gender. So I may be basically a woman, sexually born a woman, biologically, but I may identify myself as masculine. That's my prerogative and choice. I could have that. Now, this term gender identity was coined in 1964 by Robert J. Stoller. And in most societies, we find gender binaries. So there is a masculine and there is a feminine. That's how it is. So and society has expectations. So there are expectations from you in terms of being masculine or having masculine qualities and being feminine. So masculine means traditionally that, and let's understand that masculinity and femininity are social constructs. Society determines what is masculine and what is feminine. So if I behave like a man, in the sense that if I have certain qualities which समाज सोचता है कि पुरुषों में होनी चाहिए, if I have that, then I will be seen in a particular manner. And if a man has qualities which is feminine, then he's looked at in a particular manner, which may be more derogatory. For women, it's supposed to be you should feel good that you're being considered a man, right? I don't agree with it, I'll come to that. But here, so traditionally, masculinity must have what kind of qualities? Strength, courage, you must have independence, leadership, assertiveness. These are all masculine elements, which you must have machismo, you must have virility. So machismo is masculinity asserting power, not bothering about anyone. Virility has to do more with strength, energy, sexual drive. Similarly, you look at women or look at femininity. Femininity gets this a certain set of attributes you're supposed to have. If you're feminine, you must be gentle, you must have empathy, you must have humility, you must be soft-spoken, you must be gentle, you must be caring, you must be sensitive, you must be nurturing, you must be submissive, you must be quiet. Let's count, endless. Endlessly, we are required to have these feminine qualities. And this is how the distinctions are essentially made. And through this, we create gender stereotypes. There is a creation of gender stereotypes that, you know, whether these are masculine qualities, feminine qualities, this is how men should behave, this is how women should behave. Now, I would like to focus the attention of all those who are listening in today on the word transgender. And because this is an academic talk, we really need to understand that transgender, there are new words which are getting coined each day in the 21st century as we explore the dimensions of gender. Because gender discrimination is happening at a very major level. And so, on one side, we have what is called, the word is called cisgender, C-I-S-G-E-N-D-E-R. Cisgender is a man or a woman who's biologically born a man or a woman. And the gender identity is man or woman, depending on what sexual organs you are born with. Opposed to that is the word transgender. Now, transgenders have a gender identity or gender expression that differs from the sex assigned at birth. So I may be man at birth, may want to be a drag queen, I may want to wear a dress, I may want to wear colored feathers, I may want to put on lipstick, I may want to behave in a particular manner. So being transgender is also, please to remember that being transgender means being independent of your sexual orientation. I must make it very clear here. In our mind, there are these concepts of sexuality linked with gender all the time. So transgenders may be and can be, it is an umbrella term, and they could have any kind of sexual orientation. In transgenders, they could be heterosexual, they could be homosexual, they could be bisexual, they could be asexual, and they may decline to label their sexuality. A lot of individuals do not want to label their sexuality. Now, we have a wonderful example which is coming up with in Hollywood. You know, Angelina Jolie is one of Angelina Jolie's daughters, dresses like a boy. She likes to dress in trousers and pants and cut her hair short. And so she's gender fluid. To say that she is not a girl is wrong, but biologically born a girl. But her gender identity is something she wants the freedom to have to identify. Now, why am I talking about these differences? Because we must understand, along with women, all of these are marginalized. And all of these are oppressed. And all of these are experiencing and will experience in time to come, continue to experience and struggle for greater equality and parity. So in transgenders, we must understand either a transgender person wants a medical intervention and wants to become and transition his identity from one to the other and become a transsexual. So you're born a man, you undergo surgery and treatment and transition, and you become a woman. So that's one route. The other route is that transgender becomes an umbrella term. And in that umbrella term, there are multiple things. So you have non-binary or genderqueer, then you have bigenders, you have pangender, you have gender fluid people, you have agender people, you have got cross dressers, women dressing like men and men dressing like women. And to please understand that their sexual orientations could be any. It could be bisexual, or heterosexual, homosexual. We don't know that, because transgenders would like to have their own definition. They want to have the power to choose how they are going to define and what kind of identity they would like to take. There is another word here I'd like people to focus on. That word is intersex. This term intersex earlier used to refer to hermaphrodites or congenital eunuchs, what we call hinjras. They do not fit into the typical definitions of male or female bodies because biologically they've got ambiguous reproductive organs, right? Having said this, I've more or less defined what comes under the purview of gender. So of course it's women, but along with women, I've given you this long list of who else fits in. So when we talk of gender discrimination, we are not talking only of discrimination of women. We will also talk about discrimination of men who may choose a woman's identity or femininity as part of their personality. So today we're going to talk about discrimination based on gender. Now this is also called sexual discrimination, and it includes a term called sexism. So what does it involve? It involves prejudiced treatment of men and women, because we're talking of gender. We're not talking of women discrimination. We're talking today of gender discrimination. So prejudicial treatment with prejudice, men and women, based on the fact that they choose to be of a particular gender. So within this framework, sexism will operate when men and women are framed within two dimensions of the same social cognition. And one of the most famous feminists, Bell Hooks, she said something interesting. She said, sexism is a system of oppression that results in disadvantages for women. So within the gender framework, we will and must focus today on sexism. So when we talk of gender discrimination, we also come to the concept of sexism because we are wanting to deal today directly with what is happening with women. It's happening with all others. It happens with transgenders. It is also happening with women. So she says that this is a system which is there and which makes it unequal for women. And another philosopher, Marilyn Fry, she defines sexism as, I quote, an attitudinal, conceptual, cognitive, orientational complex of male supremacy and male chauvinism and misogyny. Three important terms: male supremacy, that they are most important and the whole society is patriarchal and male-centric; male chauvinism, their sense of entitlement; and misogyny, hatred for women. So much of it is coming out of hatred for women. Kate Mann, another philosopher, has also said that sexism, or on the basis of gender discrimination, which is sexist in its approach, is a branch of the patriarchal order itself. And so when we are looking at gender inequality, we are dealing with something that deals with men and women not being equal. So gender inequality is the idea that men and women are not equal. and that being born a woman, or being born, or choosing to be a transgender, or being born it affects my living experience. So because I'm a woman, I experience life differently from a man. Because I'm a transgender, I experience life differently as a person. And these differences will arise out of multiple things. One, that I have a different biology. Two, that because I have a different biology and I have a different experience, I have a different psychology. And there will be cultural norms. So there will be a society, there will be traditions, there will be norms of that society, which are going to determine what's happening. If we look at the world today, there are two kinds of distinctions that arise. That this differentiation or this inequality results out of two things. One, it's socially constructed, and we have, second, empirical data. It is data-based and empirically grounded. N number of research. I'm not going to quote today. Most of you can Google search and find what kind of data exists on the kind of discrimination that exists for women across the world, whether it's and at multiple levels. So what have studies shown? Studies have shown that the different lived experiences of genders across multiple domains and many domains remains different from that of the mainstream man. So whether you look at education, look at life expectancy, look at personality, look at interests, look at family and family life, look at careers, look at political affiliations. In all these spheres, studies have found that women are discriminated against, women are not given equal status and equal opportunity. Let's quickly take examples from our own life situations. Look at education. The government of India has had to have interventions for girls' education. Young girls were not being, think of India 50 years ago, think of India 20 years ago. I think of an India when I came to begin to teach. The percentage of girls coming into universities was so low. Despite the kind of effort that the government of India is doing in wanting to bring women to the fore, Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao chal raha hai. That's a big statement. Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao ek desh mein hai. It absolutely conveys that this discrimination and inequality stays. So in the area of education, women are discriminated. We don't need to talk about it. We need to just continue to understand and flag off. All of us young women and men who hold our hands and take us forward and support us, we need to understand that these are the areas in which we need to work. So education is one. Then we come to life expectancy. Women were dying earlier. They were given less medical attention. I remember a survey was done in one UP village, and we were very surprised. I was part of the survey in an indirect manner. Whenever people went into a house and asked कि घर में किसी की तबीयत खराब है, people would say नहीं, सब ठीक है, हम ठीक है, हम ये ठीक है, वो ठीक है, ये ठीक है. Nobody ever bothered in the house to answer कि औरत कैसा फील कर रही है, लड़की घर में कैसा फील कर रही है. How was the discrepancy caught? जो primary health center था, at that primary health center, n number of women were going with backaches, stomach aches, with infection, vaginal infections, all kinds of other things. But when the survey was done, it never showed up because women and women's health was not a priority in any home. Nobody bothers if her back aches, or nobody bothers if she's got fever. Nobody thinks it's important that she needs to see a doctor. She does that on her own and goes out on her own. So a lot of work has gone into looking after women. So maternity, child health issues where we have people who are looking at maternal child health. So government of India has had an intervention. It's not just government of India. If you look at women across the world, this was the case. And every country has had to take steps to make sure that women were getting good medical medical support so that their life expectancy could go up, that the maternal mortality rate would go down, that when children were being born, women would not die. So we've had discrimination there. Nobody has bothered. Nobody thinks that it is important for women Nobody thinks that it is an issue at all. Nobody thinks that women's health is of any use or of any significance. But that is gradually changing. So this is another area in which we are discriminated. Third being of personality. This is very interesting. I just spoke about it. Girls should be gentle, girls should be quiet, girls shouldn't speak too much, girls must listen, girls must care, girls must give pani to the bhai, the brother must get the water given to him through the girl, she must learn to cook, she must learn to play with the doll, her personality is shaped by gender stereotyping firmly entrenched within the family structure. So even the personality of a girl, does not have the freedom to decide how she could be. Similarly, boys are not allowed to decide what they want to be. Boys don't play with dolls. Boys must not cry. Boys must not feel pain. Boys must be strong. Boys must take decisions. Boys must protect the girls. What are these notions that we are constantly feeding to our children, and even today in every household? Unknowingly, this happens with us. And in the most educated families, we see that personality, when it comes to the personality development of children, the girl's personality gets most affected by these gender stereotypes. And even boys, I would say that even boys, there are a lot of boys who may want to be gender fluid. I know for sure that a nephew of mine loves sometimes to just comb his hair like in a particular manner, or once he's very much a boy, but he paints his nail, or he'd like to try something interesting, pierce his ear. And everybody would say, well, what is this girly stuff? The fact remains, it's not girly stuff. He should have the freedom or the choice. On the basis of gender, you're discriminating. And you're discriminating and shaping his personality the way society of that particular culture wants it. And that particular culture wants to shape it. So studies have shown that, the lived experiences of people is that even their personalities get affected so much. It gives them so much psychological trauma if they're forced to behave in a particular manner. For example, I grew up being a tomboy. I was always called a tomboy. I never liked being called a tomboy. I love to play marbles, and I love to climb trees, and I love to do everything that boys should do, and why should they do it and I can't do it? I was trying to always break that. And I was always seen as being, tomboyish. And so everybody looked at me and said, oh, she's a tomboy. So it was expected that I was never going to be prettily dressed. I was never going to wear makeup. I was always going to have one plait. I was always going to look like a plain Jane because I was a tomboy. But I loved to wear my makeup. I loved to wear nice clothes. I loved to dress for a wedding. And I had that struggle, a distinct struggle. My life experience, I had this distinct struggle. Why can't I be both? Why can't I play with the boys like they are boys? And why can't I come and be a woman when I want to be a woman? Even today, at my workplace, I will come to that. When I put across my point, I'm constantly told, you're being aggressive, you're being this, you're being that. Well, I'm being assertive. I'm not being aggressive. I'm just asserting myself. I'm putting my point across. So I'll come to that when we come to workplace. But in terms of shaping my personality, I had the biggest struggle of my life. So I do remember that later I remained pretty absorbed in my studies and my work. And I always kept breaking all those taboos which existed in society about how women should be and how they should dress and what they should do. And I found it very difficult, and it was a huge, huge struggle. And I know that most girls go through this, and most girls do not have the courage to fight and to say, no, this is the way I want it. I want to go play out with the boys like the boys, then come back and dress like a girl. So if I was playing like the boys, my mother would sometimes tell me, अरे भाई तुमको कपड़े की क्या जरूरत, तुम्हें क्यों साड़ी चाहिए, तुम्हें पैंट्स हैं तो जीन्स हैं, पहनो, करो, घूमो. And my other sisters were given pretty dresses, and I insisted, and I said, no, I need a pretty dress also. And I remember distinctly that when I grew older and I came into work and I was wearing saris and I was wearing a bindi and I was dressed the way I was, some of my male colleagues and friends who had been in college with me, they ended up saying, oh my God, Nishi, you're so pretty, you look so feminine, you look so nice. This act of pinpointing that this is the kind of personality which you should have, this is the persona into which you should fit, this can be very troublesome and very discriminatory, even though we don't believe that it is so. It is very, very discriminatory. Of course, in the home, in your personality, that if a boy ends up cooking with the mother, they'll say, "Arey, ye to bahut mogiya hai, ladki jaisa hai." Huh? And the poor boy has to feel ashamed. If he's empathetic, kind, and generous, looking after dogs, he says, "Oh, he's very sensitive, and he's going to hurt himself, and he's so not masculine." It's very hurtful to the boys. What happens to us? I mean, and when I'm called a tomboy, I'm expected to take it as a compliment. But if a boy is called a mogia or he's like a girl, it's an insult. Either which way, you're discriminating. Because I don't feel great being called a boy. I don't want to be called a boy. At my place of work, may I tell you, once a very important vice chancellor of mine with whom I worked ended up saying to me, "Madam is the only man in this university." I just looked at him. I said, "Sir, please don't compare me to a man. Compare me to something better." I mean, would you ever tell a man, if he's being kind and generous and nice, that he's the only great woman in the university? That will not be taken as a compliment. So women have to resist. Women have to find opportunities and moments in their life and their life experiences when they will have to be able to say, "Sorry, it doesn't work this way. I don't like being compared to a man. I hate being called a tomboy. I'm just a full-spirited, wonderful woman who likes to enjoy herself and play games that were traditionally meant for boys, but which women play now." Fortunately, over the past 30 years, much has changed. Things are changing and people are looking at it. So personality is the next point. Then linked to personality is the idea of interests. What interests should girls have? What interests should boys have? Girls in the kitchen, girls with the dolls, girls with the home, girls with clothes, girls with fashion, girls with this, girls with that, and boys with work, boys with outdoor games, boys with more masculine activities. This entire concept is discriminatory towards both, towards women and towards men. There are lots of girls. Boys can do maths, girls can't do maths. What do you mean by that? Girls do equally well at maths. But these are social norms and gender stereotyping, which is absolutely being pushed down our throats all the time because we are not willing to accept that this is the way it is happening. And we want to conform to a social norm, a social structure the way it is. Coming to family life, it is related to your personality and interests. Family life is also, roles are decided for girls. When I was young, my father used to take me out and make me wash the car and polish it and teach me about the car. And my mother used to always tell him, "Why are you teaching her all this? She's not supposed to be doing all this." Fortunately for me, I had a father who would say, "Aane wale samay mein she will have to learn to do it. In times to come, she will have to do it. She needs to learn." So he allowed me, without discriminating, that this is boys' activity and this is girls' activity. My mother, who herself was a doctor and a joint director of medical health services, she learned over bringing us up that she need not enforce these gender stereotypes that tea has to be made by the girl can't clean the car, the girl can't beat up boys. I remember fighting with boys and beating them up, and my mother having the shock of her life and saying that girls are not supposed to do this. You'll beat up your husband. I've never beaten up my husband. So, but I learned that I could, if I wanted to, and felt that I wanted to beat up somebody, I could. And that support came from my father. So within the family framework, there should be no role divisions. Whenever you're dividing roles for girls and boys, it is a subtle kind of discrimination. And that gender discrimination, ho sakta hai that the boy in your family may be a gentle, nurturing, kind boy. And the girl may be the more assertive kind who would like to go ahead. I remember growing up, I have a very masculine and younger brother, who's very masculine and very much a man with 4 children, having a nice life, etc. But when he was a kid, I was the one who was protecting him. somebody beat him up in the colony or something, he'll come running to me and tell me, you know, Nishi, so and so has done this, and I'll go there and fight it out and say, how dare you? So why can't family life be less discriminatory? Because when family life becomes discriminatory, when your personality development is clouded by and shadowed by, and your life experiences, the interests in your life are shadowed by these kinds of gender stereotyping, you have difficulty expressing yourself. You have great difficulty getting your self identity in place, and your gender identity gets mixed up, and it impacts your life in multiple ways and makes you feel marginalized, makes you feel small, makes you feel unwanted, makes you feel unloved. So many things happen. Coming to the next point, where in lived experiences where discrimination exists, come to careers. There is a huge kind of disparity in most professions between male employees and female employees. Income disparity is amazing. And n number of studies prove that female employees get paid less, male employees get paid more. Hollywood, female actresses get paid less. Bollywood, they get paid less. Men get paid more. They're doing the same amount of work. And that kind of disparity is something against which we are constantly fighting, and that fight still persists and will go on. But to say that there is no income disparity would be wrong. Now, I would like to share a career. There's another something that comes in careers is called the glass ceiling, that women can go up till here, beyond this they can't go. And I'd like to use my own life experience to give you an example of what happened. When I came into the academia, I came into the world of academia believing that because this has to do with intellectual capacities, that it would be equal, that I would have equal opportunity. I'll be able to express myself and say things, and I'd be able to attain if I were good. But my life learning is, which I've shared with everyone, is that I work 500 times more than an average teacher, male teacher, to be considered equal to men. And far more than that. Earlier I used to say I work 100 times more. No, I work 1,000 times more than a man. And even then they will have a problem giving me the top shot. Now, while introducing me, Neha said that I had become let me tell you, I became the first woman chief provost. I became the first woman dean student welfare in the 100-year history of the university. First woman director, development and planning, which always goes to a man and goes to a man of economics. And I was an English professor, but it went to me because they found me capable. Then I became the first proctor, chief proctor in 100 years, law and order on the campus. I set up a new model for proctorship. I broke a lot of glass ceilings. But let me tell you how and why I broke the glass ceilings. I was very capable. I was very good. And I was always good and capable at my work. And everybody, including my bosses, knew that I was good at it. But let me tell you this, that I was given these opportunities at a point of time when there was no, for the chief proctor, for all other positions, I may have got it at my merit, and we had some very open-minded and good vice chancellors who came, who did not believe in gender discrimination and allowed women the opportunity, and capable women to come up and do it. And I've met such vice chancellors, I've worked with them, wonderful men who had open minds, who saw us not as woman or man, who saw us as academicians, and according to our merit gave us things. But I know for sure that a couple of positions I got, including that of chief proctor, when I got it, it came to me because of the Tina factor. The Tina factor, there is no alternative. There was no alternative. The university was in such bad shape that no male colleague was willing to take up the proctorship of the university. And the only option the vice chancellor had was, I had a long history of good of the students, handling students, being student welfare, dean student welfare, successful chief provost. And he came to me and he spoke to me and he actually literally pleaded with me and said, please take it because otherwise we don't know what's going to happen. And the boys respect you. So it was literally that there is no alternative. Then they said, all right, Nishi Pandey should become doctor. Now this, I have something to say here. For women, it's a no-win situation either way. So you think that I'm breaking a glass ceiling by becoming the first proctor. But the minute I break the glass ceiling, the woman is standing on a cliff. I call that the cliff top experience. So I broke the glass ceiling, but I'm standing on the cliff. Because there are two things that can happen. If I fail, I'm down the cliff. And the men get to say, look, we told you she was a woman, she would fail. If I succeed, then they say, look, we knew she could do it and we were there. But on the top of the cliff, the woman stands alone, and she stands absolutely alone. And she has to only depend on her own capacities to be able to succeed. That is how it is today in 2020. I'm saying this from personal experience. I see myself as a very empowered woman. I've been able to do everything. I take my own life decisions. I have control over my life experiences. I know what I want in life. I know how I've got there. And as I share this, I would like to tell women, it's a long and arduous journey, but we have to carry on with this journey. And this journey has to be undertaken for the next generation of women to be able to achieve. Now, what happened by my taking all these wonderful positions and breaking the glass ceiling? Today, with a young vice chancellor, what has happened is that the University of Lucknow at this moment, in its administrative structure, has almost 40% women. 40% women. We have a dean student welfare who's a woman. We have a dean IQ who's looking after IQAC, another woman who's looking after, of course, chief provost is a woman. We've got so many positions that women have now got because one woman could reach there and prove that it can be done. So that opens the path. And I'm very happy and proud that I could open that path and many more women could come forward. And women are now fine. So somebody will have to take the lead. Somebody will have to break the glass ceiling. But when you break the glass ceiling, remember that it requires 1,000 degrees more effort than a normal male to break the ceiling. After you've broken it, you're alone for a long, long time. And it's a long, long struggle, a lonely struggle at the top. And then you have to maintain yourself there. But we are up to it. We can do it. It's not that we can't do it. Don't fear. You can do it. Have faith in yourself. Do it. So there is huge discrimination. Let me give you another example of discrimination at the place of work. I get an equal salary to a man. So I'm not talking about income disparity. I'm talking about equal salary. Now we are in a meeting. I may be, and there are men in the meeting. So in the meetings, whenever I want to make my point, and I've held important positions, I always find that the men will, one or two men will say, Madam bahut aggressive hai, if I want to say something. Madam bahut aggressive. So I asked them. Once, it got to me. So I said to them, did I beat you? Did I hurt you? Did I harm you? Did I destroy you? Did I kill you? What have I done? Have I taken something from you? No, no, madam, you have done none of this. So if I've done none of this, how am I aggressive? I'm not aggressive. You're using the wrong word. Aggression means killing, taking away, destroying. Pakistan is aggressive towards India. What am I being? I'm just being assertive. I said, use the word assertive. An assertive woman is a threat. A woman who knows her mind is a threat. So if the patriarchy is operating, which it is, and it is the patriarchy which is promoting and propelling this huge gender disparity and marginalization for women, it is patriarchy which is working and operating at multiple levels, then it's operating equally badly here. And as women in academia, I feel it was my duty to tell men that assertive women need to be accepted. So we women, what happens normally when someone says, Madam, bahut aggressive, women just calm down. Why? Because women half the time are seeking approval. We are always wanting validation of the males. अच्छी बेटी है, she's a good daughter, she's a good sister, she's a good wife, she's a good mother. Why do we have to be good wives, mother, and why do men have to tell us that we are good wives and mothers? Why don't we know that we are good wives and mothers because we do what we need to do? We need to be caring for our children, we need to nurture our children, we need to be strong for our children, we need to protect our children, we need to have courage for our children. We know that. So this discrimination that, we must, so I need to tell women here at this point, stop seeking approval. The day you stop seeking approval, that your head of department should say, madam bahut achhi hai. Kyun? Because everything the head says, I will say yes, sir. I will not oppose it. I will not have an opinion. I will not have a view. I will say it very quietly. Then when he talks, I will allow his view to prevail. I will not contest. I will not argue. And if I don't do any of that, I am a good woman. And what am I doing? I'm just seeking his approval. That's all I'm seeking. That's what's happening. So this kind of approval seeking, unless it stops, gender discrimination will not end. We have to stop seeking approval of the patriarchs. We have to stop seeking approval of those men who are sexist, who are not standing on our side, who don't look at us as equals. We don't need to seek their approval at all. We need to understand that. Finally, I'm coming to the next point, which is, when we are looking at the lived experiences of genders across many domains where we experience discrimination. Education, I've talked of life expectancy, I've talked of personality, I've talked of interests, I've talked of life, family life, I've talked of careers, I've talked of political, now I'm coming to the final one, that's political affiliation. What place do women have in politics? Have you seen that? We hardly have any place in politics. I mean, we are not even being given our quotas. Women have in India, in the parliament, have had to fight. Women in politics in America, women in politics in the US, the UK. Look at the life of Margaret Thatcher. Look how late it came to them. In India, we got a woman prime minister, and Sri Lanka got a woman prime minister. Why did you get women prime ministers? Because they were daughters of politicians. They didn't get it on their pure merit. They came as daughters of politicians. Look at the politicians in India. They have all come because they're proteges of somebody or the other. How many women politicians have come up from the grassroots? So we may have a Mamata Banerjee, or you may have an occasional Uma Bharti or someone like that. But largely they've come in. If you look at them across the board, they've come in because they have people who are pushing them. Either it's a father, or it's a husband, or it's somebody they know, or it's a man in their life, or it's somebody who's patronizing them, somebody who's wanting more women to come into the party to give it a better look. So, but are they allowed to speak? Are they allowed to legislate? Are they allowed to get their voice in? No. Women are pushing. But if you look at the political scenario, we are still way off. Some Scandinavian countries, New Zealand and other countries where there are women prime ministers, they are coming up. And in many Scandinavian countries, you have more women politicians and legislators than others. But if you look at the mainstream countries, if you look at America, if you look at UK, if you look at all other places, look what happened to Theresa May. Look what happened to Hillary Clinton. America was willing to vote for a person like their present president rather than vote a woman in. They're not willing to vote for a woman. They don't want the woman there. And you say that America is this land of plenty and this land of great opportunity and is the land where there is great equality. What equality are we talking about? It's very far, far away. So having said this, that having established that discrimination takes place, I'd just like to take 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Is it okay, Neha? Can I talk 15 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I'll talk about women's rights. I really want to come to women's rights now, and then we will come to how we can handle it. Let's talk of women's rights. If you look at the ancient world, what happened in the ancient, in the Egyptians. I'll just take some examples. The Egyptians, women were dependent on fathers or husbands, but they had property rights, and women they could attend court. So that was Egypt for you. What was there in India? If you look at Patanjali and Katyayana, and your principal was saying rightly, the women were educated in Vedic times. There's also evidence from the works of Patanjali and Katyayana and others that women could marry late. There is also evidence that women could choose her own husband. There was a concept of a swayamvar, and we've heard of swayamvar still very late. So she had that freedom. Then we also had the concept of Gandharva marriage. Do you know what is a Gandharva marriage? Do read and get into it. Gandharva marriages live in relationships. Women had relationships. There was a concept of the Gandharva marriage. Now, due to historical reasons or whatever, by the time the Mughals came and then the British came, and if you look at the present, our status has fallen drastically from there till here, and to go back there is a long, long journey, because this is the 20th century. These are not ancient Vedic times. We really have to struggle and see how and where how we can go forward. And we have to go forward with the world. So then coming to the West, the Anglo-Saxon women, they were commonly given equal status, but there is no actual proof. But when did this begin? You know, after the adoption of a sedentary and agricultural lifestyle, the concept of one gender being superior to the other rises. So when society begins doing agriculture, and they stay in one place and build cities and all that, then this whole concept came that one gender was inferior and the other gender was superior. And I have this story to tell. You see, when land became a part of something that needs to be inherited, then man had to ensure that the child who was going to get it was his. Therefore, women were bound in marriage. And that's where it all began. It all had to do with knowing that you are the father of this child, therefore this woman should get married to you. Then comes marriage, which I feel is one of the most, and has been one of the most oppressive and most, not just oppressive, the most degrading of all life experiences for women have come out of marriages. So we'll come to that, but we look at, looking at various societies, let us look at Rome. So women in the political process, in Roman times, they could neither vote nor could they take part in the political office. China was the best. China had a Confucian concept and principles for women, where they said that she has to obey. So she has to obey the father in her childhood, husband in her marriage, and her son after she's widowed. No space for her. This is what even I think we seem to have absorbed this concept, and this is how modern India, not 21st century India, but I think till the 1960s, 70s, this is how it was perceived, that this is how women should be. Now, let me give you some other interesting examples quickly. You'll be surprised that in the 20th century, in the 20th century, mind you, that's just 1900, the English law observed the system of coverture. What does coverture mean? That when you marry, by marriage, the husband and wife become one entity. So there is no separate entity of the woman at all. The existence of a woman is suspended during her marriage. In the US, till 1875, women were not legally defined as persons. Till the 19th century, end of 19th century, they were not seen as persons. The right to vote to women has come in 1921 in the US and America, when the suffragette movement began. In France, it was in 1965, mind you, 1965 is latter part of the 20th century. In 1965, women in France got the right to work without the permission of husbands. Women could work only with the permission of husbands. Otherwise, they couldn't. I'm just giving you interesting facts to see that all's not rosy in the Western world or everywhere you think it's good. It isn't. In Germany, women, till 1977, women had to take permission from husbands to be able to work. In Australia, till 1983, 1983, a married woman's passport application had to be authorized by a husband. If a husband did not authorize it, a woman could not get herself a passport. Right? So if you look at the world today, women in many parts of the world continue to lose their legal rights once they are married. Look at some of the laws of Yemen. Look at some of the laws of Iraq. Look at some of the, in Iraqi marriages, a man can punish his wife. In Yemen, a woman has to obey her husband. Look at women from Congo. There's so many laws within the marriage that binds a woman, takes away her individuality. Even today, across the world. And therefore, all women's groups work for this, fight for this, and carry on. So abuses and discriminatory practices against women have existed in marriage for centuries. And these are rooted. Let us not be ostrich-like and say, oh, no, they don't exist. Of course they exist. Unless you confront them, unless you articulate them, unless you resist them, how are you going to get rid of them? How are we even going to think about equality of women? Each one of us has to think about it. Nobody from outside is going to come and clear it. When you are in the marriage, what will take place in the marriage is your choice. And you decide what is going to happen. So marriages have been abusive. Marriages have been largely discriminatory. And laws and regulations and traditions related to marriage, they to this day continue to discriminate against women. To this day, all kinds of laws and regulations and traditions related to marriage are discriminatory. Largely, this discrimination is rooted in dowry. What we call dowry, or we call bride price, which gives some coercive kind of control to the men over the women. And that is something that we need to think about. So these laws, regulations, and traditions, which do not change, they support, or they help, or they protect, they contribute to the mistreatment of women through sexual violence, self-determination. We are not allowed self-determination. We are not allowed to explore our own sexuality. We are treated as property. We are sold. We are enslaved. We are rejected. We are abused. All this happens to us in marriage. We are thoroughly marginalized. We are invisible. Our opinion does not matter. So, keeping all this in mind, women's rights movements have carried on throughout the world, and I'll come to that eventually as I conclude, that all this has been happening. And in the midst of all this that has been happening, women's rights movements have taken place. Now, Navi Pillai in 2012 was the High Commissioner of Human Rights. And I'm here coming to a point where I was told, Neha says I can take my time. Thank you, Neha. So I'm told, and I'm quoting this, I visited this, that it was only in 2012 that it was articulated that women's rights also has to do with human rights. A woman's rights is also to be equated with human rights. It's the right of a human being to be free. It's the right of a human being to education. It's the right of a human being, just as it is for a man, for a woman to have health, to family, to her own decisions. And I'm quoting just that one section which interests me and which will be of interest to everyone here who's listening in today. I quote, this is Navi Pillai in 2012, High Commissioner Human Rights. Ensuring that women have full autonomy over their bodies is the first crucial step towards achieving substantive equality between men and women. Unless and until a woman can decide when she will marry, when she will have the babies, what she wants to do with her life, whom does she want to have sex with, can't be determined by everyone. Look at the way our lives are at the moment. This is so true. Let me give you an example. A girl marries into a family and comes, abo bichari bahu abhi, she's just entered the house. married on a parent's suggestion, family pressure, all kinds of things. She marries and comes. Then the minute she enters, oh, now you must have a baby. Now you must have a baby. Now you're ready for a baby. We are all ready to become grandparents. Hello, where's her wish? Does she want to settle in? Does she want to psychologically adjust? Does she want to have a little more bit of a relationship? It's been an arranged marriage. Can she take a call on when she wants the baby? We don't allow her even that freedom. Unless and until women can take their own decisions about their life, where they can study, whom they want to work with, whom they want to sleep with, whom they want to marry, when do they want to have children, don't want to have children, how they want to live, give them the right over their body. That's the first fight. Give them the right to choose. Give your daughter the right to choose where she will study, what she will study, when she will marry, whom she will marry, when she will have a baby. Respect her independence. Respect her choice. Support her. Unless that happens, how are we ever going to imagine that any woman's rights is going to come across or any discrimination is going to go away? So we need to think about it. Coming to the last part of my talk will be on women's rights. So what are women's rights? Women's rights are rights and entitlements which women are claiming, and they want it. It's women and girls wanting it worldwide. And it never became a movement till the 19th century. In the 19th century, it became, why did the women's rights movement come about? You see what happened when the two wars happened. Even before the wars, when women came into the workplace, they began to come into the workplace, and when there was a shortage of men and they had to bring in women to work in the factories and other places, women started understanding what was happening with them, and they started asking and demanding for rights. Earlier, women in the West were only either governesses or teachers or nurses. They were not being given any significant or important positions to be working in. So it was in the 19th century that they began to think, at the end of the 19th century, and towards the 20th century, we have the women's rights movement in the 19th century, and we have the feminist movement coming in the 20th century. And then with the feminist movement, you have other things like radical feminism, etc., which has come in. I'm not going to go into that, but I'm only going to talk about women's rights. And women's rights is human rights. We need to be focused on what are our rights. Because whenever we talk of a movement or talk of something in talking of our rights, we have to talk in the context of our own culture. We have to talk in the context of our own region. A model that fits the West may not fit us. As an Indian woman, as a girl who's grown up with Indian traditional values, who has willingly adopted and accepted and enjoys certain aspects of the traditions of my own culture, I may not want to become a radical feminist. I don't want to be a radical feminist. I am a feminist. But I am a feminist who believes that a man can also be a feminist. Because a feminist essentially talks about the rights of women as human beings. And I'm giving you the framework within which I think we need to talk. The framework of this talk today is that you need to look at your life experiences. You need to look at your personalities. You need to look at your workspace. You need to look at your family. You need to look at your society, don't you? And you need to live in that. You need to have meaningful relationships. And meaningful relationships don't come only with other women. They come with men. Our fathers are, and how we can reduce this discrimination. So when we talk of the rights, what are these rights for which we women are fighting? And I'm going to count them for you. First, rights to bodily integrity and autonomy. I must have the right to my own body, and I must have the autonomy to do what I want to do with my body. So I need that freedom. That's my right. Every human being has the right to their own body to do what they want to do with it. So I need that right. Second, I have the right to be free, my life to be free of sexual violence. I don't want sexual subjugation. No woman wants that. So when you talk of women's right, you want a space which is free of sexual violence. I want the right to vote. I want the right to hold public office. I want the right to legislate, for my voice to be heard. I need the right to enter into legal contracts. I need to be an individual in my own right. The minute I'm married, I don't want to be subjected to that of a man. I need to have equal rights in family law. I need to have equal rights at work. I need to have fair wages. I need to have equal pay. I need to have reproductive rights. I have to have rights to own property, and I have a right to education. So when you look at women's rights, these are the rights for which fight has been carrying on at every level. And a lot of legislation has come in. Look at the legislation for domestic violence. Look at the legislation that has come in for girls' education. Look at the legislation that has come in India for equal rights of a daughter in the share of the property with her parents. Earlier, the son would get all and the girls gave up their rights. Ki chalo bhaiya ko de dete hain, why should we? Now the girl has a right. If it's your parents' property, you are 2 brothers and 3 sisters, you'll all get an equal share. So a lot of changes are coming in and the government is looking at it. Governments across the world are looking at it. But to say that discrimination has finished is not right. Coming here just for a moment to the suffragist movement, I had said that it was in 1921 that that in the US and other places they got to vote. But it was New Zealand which in 1893 grants women the right to vote. Then the French women got to vote in 1944. The Greek women got to vote in 1952. Saudi Arabia allowed its women to vote in 2015. Please take note of that, 2015. That's 21st century, excuse me. Swiss women could not vote till 1971. Till 1971, Switzerland women could not vote, and they could, in this some small cantons, areas, they voted, got the right to vote even later. Let me give you another very interesting thing, that incident that happened. We keep thinking that America is this great place where there's great equality for women, and the only equality that exists is against blacks. No, it isn't. Let me tell you a story about America. In the 1980s, till the 1980s, what happened was that in America, many restaurants, high-end restaurants, used to have 2 menus, one for men and one for women. What was the difference? In the women's menus, the cost of the item was not written. Why? Because money was not their matter. They were not the ones who had to pay. They did not need to know how much was being paid. Only men needed to know how much was to be paid. So the men's menu had the cost and the women's menu did not have a cost. Now there was this lady, Kathleen Brick, who took one in 1980, who took one of her male colleagues for lunch to one of these places and was given this menu without the. She felt so angry and humiliated. And she felt so abused and disturbed by this that she actually got a lawyer, Gloria Allred, to file a discrimination suit. And this discrimination suit, of course, the suit fell through because they withdrew the suit. Then it was, see, right up to the 1980s, you could have this kind of a discriminatory thing for women in America. And further than that, I told you what happened with Hillary Clinton. Another point that gets proven with Hillary Clinton is that because you are a woman and you are in politics, you're being judged by different parameters. The framework for judging you is different. So your morality, your sexuality, your behavior, the way you dress, so many things become important. And just because you are that way, you are perceived like that, I think Hillary took a beating because of that. Because certain things that Hillary Clinton had against her, much worse things were there against the present president. And yet he got elected, but because he was a man, it was forgiven and forgotten. That he will tap some woman's back and talk about her bottom, or he will say something derogatory and get away with. Nothing from his past was raked up. But for a woman, a huge hue and cry will make, and the entire country stood up and judged. Simply because she was a woman. And a man gets away with it. So, in the world that we live in, I have given you the framework within which we have to look at women's rights. I've given you the framework within which gender stereotypes exist. And let me tell you, one of the major things that is happening, and I'd like to draw your attention towards the end too, is that, we talk of gender stereotyping, but have you noticed how sexist language is? There exists sexism in language because language promotes male superiority. By promoting male superiority, it is also affecting your consciousness. It is affecting a woman's perception of her own reality and men's. It is encoding and transmitting cultural meaning and socialization at a very subtle level. So when we are talking about gender discrimination, language is also discriminating against us immensely. So when we are talking about fighting for women's rights, we also have to start looking at books, ideas, thoughts that are being put through our textbooks, which are not gender neutral. We have to look at gender neutral language. We have to take away those sexist elements which have existed, and we need to come to a more neutral, gender neutral space. So if you look at certain look at certain terms used in language, they are so gender specific, pejorative terms. Look at all the abuses that we use in Hindi. Look at the abuses that are used in English. All those pejorative terms need to go. We need to look at that also. So there are multiple levels at which we have to fight. Now, we talked about occupational sexism, that people will be very patronizing. So if they are giving you a position, if they're doing something, they won't hesitate to say how good you are and how patronizing. They're patronizing. Oh, I thought I'll give her this opportunity. So patronizing you is something that they really love to do. They love to patronize you. So women need to be patronized. That's what they feel. But I think we as women have to begin to think that in our own life experience, we need to cut ourselves away from it and then think. Finally, I'm coming to the point of objectification. The objectification of women is something which is terrible, and is happening. Look at the world look at the media, look at advertisements. How much of women's bodies are being objectified, and how immensely people are enjoying it. And men have always looked at showing nude pictures of women and women selling cars. And it's just recently, because of the way pressure has been built, that we now find sometimes a nude man or a half-clad man with his chest showing, or a Salman Khan or somebody showing his chest for the pleasure of women. But that's rare. And it's whether it's objectification of a male or it's objectification of a female, I think objectification of a body is not something that is acceptable and needs to be contested and fought. Because when we talk of gender discrimination, we really need to see where we are coming from and what is happening. And I have, during my discussion, during my talk, I hope it converts into a discussion. During my talk, I think one of the major things that I've tried to tell you is that when we talk of gender discrimination, let us not just talk of women. If I've talked in the perspective of women, put another man in that position and see a man who wants a different gender identity. Look at the life of transgenders. Look at those who are cross-genders. Look at those who are cross-dressing. Look at the life of homosexuals. How homophobic are we? We are not willing to look at their rights as human rights, as human beings. Sexual orientation is not going to determine the quality of your life. It's such a personal thing. So when we are women, supposing I'm a woman and I really truly want tomorrow that I want to dress in a suit and go to work. I'm very much a woman, but my dressing in a suit and going to work will raise eyebrows and will have people saying things. Why should that happen? Why can it not just be taken that she just wants to wear trousers and come and she's feeling comfortable? And you'll find that there are these snide remarks that, look at her, dresses like a boy, something's on, must be a lesbian. If there is a gentleman professor who wears a kurta or a nice colored pajama and dresses well, or is caring and generous, and his physical gestures, behavior is not like that of a man, as abrasive and pushing, and is gentle, and he is looked down upon and talked about in such a derogatory fashion. So we all come in the same group. They're very much a part of the group that is women, because on the margins we stand, because we belong to a gender that is not male. And so what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to understand the backdrop and the framework, which I hope I've covered today. And we are supposed to fight back. Now, for fighting back, there are two things. You either fight back in groups, or you can fight your own battle. But for fighting your own battle, two things need to be done. First, you have to acknowledge that it is happening to you. All women are in denial that it doesn't happen to them, it happens to another. Sorry, ladies, it is happening to every single person in every single home. You're just not acknowledging it. So if you want that you should not be discriminated against, first acknowledge it, then learn to accept it, then articulate it, then begin to talk about it, and then you're going to protest about it. This process has to take place with every woman. It has to take place with everyone of gender other than male who is feeling discriminated. This is the process that has to be followed by every individual. And these are personal life experiences. These are personal fights. These are meant to negotiate, to create a space for yourself in your family, in your workplace, in society, in the political arena, and anywhere else you go. So first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that it is happening with us. And I think that overcoming it is difficult, not impossible. I'm not saying that my struggle against discrimination has ended. It continues even to this day. If I aspire for the highest position at the university, and there is a man who's lesser qualified than me, he will get it. I may not get it simply because I'm a woman, and I may not please the powers that be in a particular manner. So we will continue to face this for a few more years, because in the fight for the rights for women, for women's rights, for gender equality, for job parity, and for other kinds of equalities that we seek as women and we seek as a particular gender, we have a long fight ahead. We can do it, we must do it. But at the core of it lies one final point I want to make for every woman, for every person who feels marginalized because of their gender. Please have the power to take your own decisions. That's the most empowering feeling. Take your own decisions about your life. Take your own decision about your body, your work, your reproductive system, your life, how and where it will. Take control over your life. Don't allow men to control you. Don't allow the patriarchy to take over. Please, lots of male colleagues. My father, I feel empowered because of the freedom my father gave me. Every father has to give the daughter that freedom. Every father has to give that congenial family environment. Every father has to nurture that personality which will come forth and talk for equality, fight for equality. So as I conclude, I call forth all men in the world to join hands with us. We are here equal. You are the love of our life. You are our fathers. You are our brothers. You are our husbands. You are our lovers. You are our friends. We want to hold hands with you. We want to stand equally with you. We want to celebrate our life with you. And it can never happen unless and until you support it. Because transformation will only come when they come on board and when mothers begin to train their sons. When mothers will train their sons, keeping in mind what their gender identity preference is, rather than stereotypes. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm ready to take questions if there are any.
Thank you so very much, ma'am, for such an enlightening talk and for pointing out major issues which needs to be taken care of. Thank you so much. Ma'am, there are some questions we can. Yeah. Chanchal Dharamraj is asking, do you think the feministic movements such as Me Too do any good to the voice of women in the society?
Look, every little voice will make a difference. So if the Me Too movement has come, it shocks everyone and everyone thinks that this is wrong and that is wrong. I think every little movement matters. So whether you're protesting quietly in your home, or you're protesting loudly at your workplace, or quietly at your workplace, or you are protesting loudly in a public space, you need to register your protest. You need to open your mouth and speak. And therefore, the Me Too movement will make a difference. And I'm sure it has made the difference, because if you look at Hollywood, you have a very big mega producer who's in behind bars. And every little movement is one step ahead. So I think the Me Too movement is a good movement, and women need to come out and speak out.
Yes, ma'am.
All man's bluff.
Ma'am, second question, Hridaya Shri Labha. She's asking, how can we change the thinking of people? Like, we are talking about the discrimination and stereotyping, which is there, but how can we change the thinking of the people?
Now, at a larger level, I think a lot of things is done. So you have interventions that can be made in changing thought processes in two ways. One, that you educate yourself, and that as you go through your life experience, you make sure that you are able to put forth good arguments and make your point. So whether it's to your mother, or it's to your father, or it's to your brother, or it's to your husband, or it's whoever it is, you should be able to live that life and fight for that change. Number one. Number two, we have a lot of interventions that are being done by NGOs, governments, and everyone for gender sensitization. So gender sensitization issues are getting taken up, and they help. They help a lot. We've seen in primary schools, the way boys begin to perceive and look at girls changes drastically when they are put through the gender sensitization workshops. So that is one mode of advocacy. That is one of not advocacy. That is one process of workshops, etc., which is for training and for gender sensitization, and for getting people to understand, think differently. And then the third level is of advocacy. Advocacy is when you are talking for bringing about changes in policies. So a lot of change in policies then that take. For example, I'm happy to see this morning that women can now have a permanent commission in the army. A lot of advocacy has gone into that. So it is changing, because people are talking at every level. But you can't expect it to change top down. It has to work both ways. So it's top down, and from down it needs to go up. So each woman needs to do it. Each boy who feels for the woman needs to do it and needs to go up. Let me give you an example. I talk about this gender sensitization to my students in the university and to my BA students. And I found a lot of boys have come back, and I talk on women's right and patriarchy. And a lot of boys back and said, ma'am, my mother was very happy, because I said, go back and talk to your mother, sit with her, eat with her, get her to eat early, be on your sister's side. The boys really went back and looked at things differently and came back and gave me a feedback. It feels different. It feels good. It's not that they don't want to be nurturing and nice and caring. It's just this gender stereotyping which is being thrust on them through social conditioning, which is as painful for boys as it is for girls.
Yes, ma'am. Can we take more questions, ma'am?
Yes, I'm free with you.
This is Mayuri Gaur. Her question is, the freedom of choice is not acceptable by the people around us, even in the family, and from family itself, it is like hindering the process.
So let me tell you this, Mayuri, is that her name? Okay. So Mayuri, let me tell you, all institutions, societal institutions confine you. So whether it's the family, or it's marriage, or it's an educational institution, look at any institution. Institution itself implies that it's going to bind you. And that's what I'm saying when I say each one of us has to negotiate for our own space in our family, at our workplace, in society. You will have to relentlessly explain to your parents what you want. So either you succumb to their pressure, or you are able to convince them. But that fight has to go on. You have to be able to explain to them that this is what you want, this is how you want it. And it's very, very difficult to negotiate for your space, but you have to make that effort. If you don't make that effort, you'll say it will never happen. But the family becomes this one place. That is why I think girls need to understand issues. And girls need to understand how those issues, women's issues, connect to real life. When you can understand that connection with real life, it is only then that you are going to be able to put your arguments together in a manner that you can convince your parents that what you're wanting is right. And so it's very, very important for you to understand that you cannot give up. Number one. Number two, don't look for parental approval all the time. Bahut achhi beti hai, she's a very good girl, she's a very good girl. So you will not argue. If you argue, all my life, my father always thought I was very upstartish. I was always arguing with him for things. He never thought I was the best daughter. It was much later that he said I was the best daughter. While growing up, I never felt I was his best daughter. My mother always thought that I was a problem. But in time, my mother understood where I stood. And in time, I was able to get my aging mother, who lost her husband at the age of 55. When my father died, I empowered my mother. Is 89 years old today. She's lived her life on her own terms. She turned around completely. She became such a strong woman, and she could do everything herself. She was so dependent on my father. Her life transformed. And my mother actually tells people that Nishi changed my life a lot. So it happens, my darling. It will happen in time.
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, next question, Mr. Roman is asking, please throw light on the laws that are gender biased and provide loopholes to convict men even before the trial.
See, I think I'm talking of India. In India, I thought one of the things that was, laws bent towards, laws are always made to protect the weak. You must understand that. So men are not weak. So whenever laws are going to be made and legislation is going to be done, it's going to be in the favor of women, tilting towards the favor of women. And so you do find many laws which tilt towards to women, which favor women. Sometimes in divorce case, people say it favors women, it favors children, because they are the marginalized. They need to be protected. Laws are meant to protect the weak. So men, I'm not saying that there are no loopholes. There will be loopholes, and no law which, supposing there's a domestic violence law, it can be misused. Supposing there's a law for divorce, it will get misused. All laws get misused. So, but that does not mean that they are ineffective. Those laws are effective and they benefit a larger number of people, and their misuse is very minuscule. So there will be laws. And let me tell you, this is not something I need to discuss here. Go on a Google search and see. Just search laws benefiting women or against men. You'll get an n number of laws thrown up from across the world. So let me give you some laws from Yemen and from Saudi Arabia and other places, and Canada and other places which have so many big loopholes where women are at the receiving end. So sometimes men are also at receiving end. There are loopholes, and whenever you approach a single law, you will know what favors you, what doesn't favor you, and there will be gaps. And for that, we will need more time. But I'm sure it's available online.
Yes, ma'am. We'll take the last question, ma'am.
Okay.
Merin John, she's asking, does this concept of gender fluidity really work?
Of gender?
Fluidity. Gender
See, okay. So when you say that gender fluidity will not work, it may not work for you. It may not work for the majority of us. It may work for 0.0001% of people. My point is that if even for 0.00001% people, gender fluidity is a reality. They want to remain gender fluid. Why can we not give them this opportunity? Why can we not give them this freedom? Why should this freedom be denied to a human being to remain gender fluid? I want an answer to that. Because every human being who's born is equal. And every human being should have the choice of remaining. Let biology not determine who you are. When I talk of gender identity, I want to have a fluid identity. What's wrong with gender fluidity? It's just an identity I choose. My biology is different. My sexuality is a different issue. And if sometimes I want to behave like a man and sometimes I want to behave like a woman, what's the big deal? So let's look at this young little kid of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Occasionally wants to dress like a boy, talk like a boy, sometimes would like to be a girl. So what's wrong with that? Why can she not have the freedom to be herself? Her parents have given her the freedom. They're not pushing her in any direction. And these are modern times in the 21st century. Why do we have to make a big deal out of sexuality and gender identity? Why can we not have the freedom? I believe we should have the freedom to choose our own gender identity.
Yes.
And as women, we should promote that. We should promote that because we are looking and searching for our own identities to be free and to be rid of pressures and binding. Let that be for all genders.
Bilkul, ma'am. I think it starts from one own self first.
Yes, of course, it always starts with you and joining bigger movements.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much for all your time. As we came to an end of this program, I would like to thank our guest speaker, Professor Nishi Pandey, ma'am, who enlightened us with her thought-provoking talk and who gave us this much of time and gave all the answers to all the queries. I'm sure, ma'am, after everything normalizes, we will surely going to invite you in Daman, and I think very soon we will do that.
Thank you, Neha. I would like to thank your principal and the coordinator of IQAC and you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I look forward to meeting you all when times are better. Everybody should stay happy, stay safe. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you
Thank
for
you, ma'am.
this opportunity and for listening to me. Thank you so much, Neha.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to express my gratitude to our principal, sir, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who has always been an encouraging force and who has given us all the freedom to execute our ideas, whatever we go with, like any ideas, and he just say, okay, do it. So thank you so much, sir, for being so supportive. And I would like to thank our vice principal, sir, who is the coordinator of IQC also, Dr. S. Balasubramaniam, as he always motivates us to be active in the field of academics and guide us. Thank you so much. And in addition to this, Nishi ma'am also knows, I would like to thank Dr. Smita Verma, Isabella Thuban College, Lucknow. It was her who connected me with ma'am, and I really thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Nishi ma'am, for accepting my invitation and coming on live. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants who have shown their interest in joining this webinar and for their active participation. Thank you, everyone. And once again, thank you so much, ma'am, for taking up your time.
Thank you, Neha. Stay safe, stay happy.
Thanks,
Bye.
ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Take care, ma'am. Good night. Bye.